It's yet another Sunday, and we're still here for some reason, but we'll make the best of it while we are. Thanks for coming as always. Shout outs to so far Dom, Victorious 30, Chow, Davey Toot, and I guess that's it. So I'm going to read some verses, and then we'll get into the topic here. And I'm pretty sure I'm preaching to the choir, but see if you can see some kind of pattern in the verses, or passages I chose. There's not a lot of it here, so but we're going to read this off and then see what you think about that. I'm pretty sure you already know, because I gave a little hint in the description on the video about trick-or-treaty. So yeah, if the stores can put out Christmas decorations in September, I can talk about trick-or-treat, even though that's not the topic. So Daniel 8:23-25 says, "In the latter part of their reign, when rebels have become completely wicked, a fierce-looking king, a master of intrigue, will arise. He will become very strong, but not by his own power. He will cause astounding devastation and will succeed in whatever he does. He will destroy those who are mighty, the holy people. He will cause deceit to prosper, and he will consider himself superior. When they feel secure, he will destroy many and take his stand against the Prince of Princes. Yet he will be destroyed, but not by human power." And good to see Professor Red MAA. I am going to use the material that you post on the comment under the other videos, so stay tuned. So that was Daniel 8:23-25, and then we have Daniel 9:27. "He will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering, and at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him." And then we have Isaiah 28:14-16. "Therefore hear the word of the Lord, you scoffers who rule this people in Jerusalem. You boast, we have entered into a covenant with death. With the realm of the dead we have made an agreement. When an overwhelming scourge sweeps by, it will not touch us, for we have made a lie our refuge and a falsehood our hiding place." So this is what the sovereign Lord says. "See, I lay a stone in Zion, a tested stone, a precious cornerstone for a sure foundation. The one who relies on it will never be stricken in panic." So then we have Joel 3:2. "I will gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat. There I will put them on trial for what they did to my inheritance, my people, Israel, because they scattered my people among the nations and divided up my land." And I'm emphasizing certain things for a reason, because there are so many people who say that God is done with a physical land and a physical people. And these passages show that he certainly is not. And we also have James Mason, M. Lou, and Doc Michael, and Nathan Oakley. Good to see you guys. So these passages are painting a picture about the coming Antichrist, basically. But before, when that starts, the tribulation, the 7 years, the last week of Daniel's 70th week, 70 weeks, will be begun not by the rapture, but by the confirmation of a 7-year treaty, which will be broken 3.5 years into it, so halfway. And it involves this covenant with death. I think it's the same covenant. Even though there's always an immediate context here, we have also prophetic foresight. And this Valley of Jehoshaphat is also called the Valley of Jezreel, and better known as Armageddon. Good to see Rachel Menifee as well. And I won't be able to keep shouting people out, but anyway, so you get the picture of what I'm saying here. And the reason I'm saying it is, of course, because there's been a peace treaty signed by Trump, but mostly orchestrated by his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. And so when I started working on this topic about this peace treaty with Israel and the United Arab Emirates, the Professor Red MAA posted a seemingly random comment linking to a video about the Kabbalah. And at first I thought nothing of it, but of course these two things turned out to blend together like peanut butter and chocolate, so we know this is a God thing, because at first I was like, yeah, I don't have time for this right now, but it turned out to be exactly what I'm going to put on the end of this. So it might be the main part, who knows. But it's kind of important to know the world you live in. And hey, Mark, good to see you too. So that's why I wanted to read those verses. And now we're going to go look at some articles on Jared Kushner. And first I'm going to try and post the link. I'm not putting this website up because of the horrible color scheme. It hurt my eyes. Yellow text on a red background. So what I'm going to do instead, I've given you the link. I think I gave you the right one. I'm going to show a PDF that I made of the page, which took out the background colors and made the text black. So that was my quickest solution to that sort of thing. And I've got another web page I'm going to show that will also be PDF because the news page it's on is very slow to load, and most of the time it times out. So I finally caught it when it wasn't timed out. And this is going to tell us something about Kushner. Now, I'm not into Bible codes. Everybody who knows me knows that. But at the same time, it gives some good background information. Now, if you read through this, you can see that this source is very against anything Trump or Kushner, which, is neither here nor there for what I'm talking about today. We just want to know who this person is. And so they have this on their introduction here about Trump battling with the hostile Democrat Party. And if you know anything about what's going on right now, they have a Supreme Court opening. And already the leftist party is vowing to even start another impeachment of Trump just to keep him from appointing a Supreme Court justice, which tells you that this is not about anything to do with the rights of the American people. It's a power struggle among the members of the visible members of the deep state. And just as the same way that wearing masks has nothing to do with public health, it has to do with conformity. So knowing the world you live in, and there are many people who still deny that there's a deep state, but we're going to take a little glimpse into that in this article. So, and the next couple also. So that's that's the backdrop of these things going on. And this was written before the treaty was actually signed. So, we have this first paragraph here about this Jared Kushner being the special envoy to the Middle East, brokering a peace deal between Israel, the Palestinian Authority, and the rest of the Arab world, although it mainly we'll see is just primarily with the United Arab Emirates. But they talk about his lack of experience and that he's a real estate mogul. But the problem is, I'm not going to go deep into that, but the problem is that if this was someone in the party that they preferred, they would not be hypercritical like this. They would be whitewashing the guy. So just to say. So yeah, white hats and black hats, red boot, blue boot, doesn't matter which one is stomping on you. But anyway, we need to know who this guy is. Graduated from Harvard, has some degrees, real estate successes and failures. And before 2015, down here in this paragraph, the second to last on this page, he supported Hillary Clinton in the 2008 Democrat primaries, and his newspaper endorsed Barack Obama over John McCain. In 2012, his newspaper endorsed Mitt Romney, but was still contributing to Democrat groups. So we can see right here that this is not about any kind of ideological conservatism. This is not in favor of the American people or any other people. This is their own power struggle and their own machinations, which is why I'm saying trick or treaty. So then in 2015, he joined his father-in-law, that would be Trump, presidential campaign, and he was very shrewd about it. It goes on to explain that he was using social media very well, which is why Trump tweets so much, using that in a time when, everyone else was still doing the newspaper and media, the electronic media advertising blitz sort of old school way, and he had the foresight at least to go, no, we got to do social media. So that's why that's been happening. Okay, he's the main impetus behind that. And let's see, last paragraph here, because as soon as I scroll down, the PDF reader skips to the whole next page, so I can't just put it in the middle. So anyway, that last paragraph is where it explains what his tactic was. So he's very good at using social media. You can see we have the connections here. The Cadre is a company that was set up, an LLC. But you can see all these different, he's involved with Goldman Sachs, George Soros. These are some pretty bad names, deep state names, or at least the face of the deep state. The real deep state you will never see or know their names until probably the tribulation. But anyway, he was very successful at this, and then it says it didn't cost a lot of money to do that. And after Trump was elected, he installed Jared Kushner, Trump did, as senior advisor, charged with, among other tasks, restarting the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. So that was his assignment from the start. He's gone to the Middle East many times, trying to sell a peace plan to the Israelis, Palestinians, and the Arab world. So this was still ongoing at the time of writing this article. Of course, he did succeed in making that happen. But the point here is that the media has not told us about who Jared Kushner really is. His father had, tax evasion problems and all that, but who is not dirty in Washington? I mean, why do we even need to say that? But deep down they ask, who is Jared Kushner? What do the Bible codes say? I don't care about the Bible codes. I'll tell you that again. I don't care about Bible codes. Okay? What I do care about is what it plainly says. And of course, like a lot of other people before him, going all the way back to Nero, people have been saying this guy is the Antichrist. And of course, they've all been wrong so far. And we'll see, we have seen from the Bible verses that I quoted earlier, that this person is someone with a fierce countenance. And I think I read that. Let me go back and hide the PDF. I've got a gazillion windows open, so a fierce-looking king, a master of intrigue. And so I'm just not seeing Kushner as fulfilling that. He may be a master of intrigue, who knows, but I don't get this fierce countenance, the fierce-looking king. And yet, there are some similarities and overlaps, but I just don't think it's a slam dunk. I'll say that, okay? I don't think anyone's a slam dunk for the Antichrist right now. So, that's what they're asking, and this is, again, a Bible code site, so I'm not going to get into that. But what I will do is go on to another article, and this one I think I have on, let's see, I have to hide the PDF again. Too many things to click. There we go. This is another critical article, so I'm looking for hostile witnesses and finding them. They're quite easy to find. But the point is that he is the architect of the Trump Middle East peace plan. And they don't really understand what's going on. So we're just going to go through this real quick and, keeping in mind the stuff that we've already read, the Bible verses and who the guy is, okay? But we're going to see that this was the person who was most likely behind getting the U.S. to move its embassy to Jerusalem, which was probably a condition for this treaty, and may have something to do with the future treaty or the future enforcement of it that involves getting the temple built. So anyway, let's look at this article. And it says that Kushner spent 3 years working on this Israeli-Palestinian peace plan. The main talking point they see as the problem that the administration's tacit endorsement of Israel's continued illegal settlements in Palestinian territory. And that we could, break this down 6 different ways. But basically, first of all, calling them illegal, and secondly, that there's such a thing as Palestinian territory. If you've seen any of my past videos at all, you know that when Israel was defeated in 70 AD by the Roman ruler Titus and his armies, they were dispersed, as was the habit of kings and wars in those days, and replaced with other people. Well, the other people in Israel's case were Philistines, the arch enemy of Israel. This is, among other people, there were lots of different people, but the name that the Romans gave to the area was Palestina, because it was named after the arch enemies of their defeated foe, the Israelites. So they were just rubbing it in Israel's face that they had lost, and they called the area after the Philistines. And that's where the word Palestinian comes from. And it was the Jews who were displaced from there and replaced by other people who were then Palestinians just by virtue of living on that land, not because they had some genetic trace all the way back. So that's where this comes from, and to say that there is such a thing as Palestinian territory is ignoring that history, of course. And then it goes on to say, multiple interviews right after the administration released its proposal. On Tuesday, Kushner said Israel's rapid growth, in other words, the settlements, are precisely why Palestinian leaders should make a deal now. In other words, the motivation for the timing, according to this article, is that if you don't make this agreement now, Israel will have more and more land. So the so-called Palestinians should settle now or they won't get anything. That's the idea that's being conveyed by the article. Whether that's actually the case or not, I don't know, but that's what it's saying. So Kushner told Al Jazeera, the news agency over there in the Middle East, that you've got to do this now, you can't wait, and otherwise you will get less and less. So then they talk about the situation they inherited in the Middle East, which it really isn't a big point I want to make right now, but they are saying the peaceful solution to the Israel-Palestine stalemate says Israel's growth is basically unstoppable, so get your land while you can. But of course, this ignores the fact that Israel is about the size of a fairly small U.S. state, and the West Bank is a small part of that, but basically it's a strategic issue. They want Israel to be in a vulnerable position, and Israel is naturally trying to secure their borders, even though they're surrounded on all sides by either enemies or the Mediterranean Sea. So, there's all sorts of intrigue going on here. But this is, the emphasis here on this article is one I want to just try to focus on. And they say it's astounding for Kushner to say that Israel restrains itself from extending its settlements unless it feels it has tacit American approval. I don't care about that right now. What I care about is how this is going to work prophetically. And what the motivations are really not as important as the fact that it's being done and that God called this, thousands of years ago. So then they go on and on about the settlements, and here's a little map that they put in there helpfully. Israel is not that big. This is not a wide area. They've got the sea on this side, the Mediterranean Sea, and Arabs all over around them. So trying to take pieces of this land is exactly not because they care about Palestinians any more than the governments of the world care about public health. It's about dividing Israel, dividing the land, and that's the key prophetically. They want to divide the land. What's left of it, it isn't even the amount of land that God originally promised to Abraham. It's a small part of it. So they think Kushner just doesn't know what he's doing, and he hates Palestinians. They're the ones who got that really totally wrong. But I'm just saying, this is the sort of thing you'll read, but you got to pick up the good parts of it. And what I'm seeing, here is the wish to divide the land. So that's the point there. And next I want to go to, let's see, this one. I'm going to close some of these out because they confuse me. I got too many windows open. So, yep, the two-state solution. The UAE, United Arab Emirates, signs the historic peace treaty with Israel. This was done on September 15th, so 5 days ago. And so is this many, according to prophecy, the Daniel 9 prophecy that we read with Israel, with Israel and many? Hard to say. I don't think there's enough to qualify as many, but, the Bible doesn't tell us exactly what's meant by many, but we have to understand that even in the days when the prophecy was given, there would be any number of different people groups in a nation. So just because Saudi Arabia may have different, some various ethnic groups, and it doesn't mean that it's a treaty with many. I just wanted to make that logical point. But the treaty was signed, and they mostly gush about who the titles of these Arab leaders that they signed with. So that mainly I'm just showing this to say it has been done, okay? So I can give you this link if you want in the chat, and you can check that out later. We also have a Fox News, or no, it's not Fox News. I think it is. Yeah, I'm doing a PDF again, this time because the web page is very slow to load, and most of the time it times out, and I just happen to catch it in time to keep that from happening. So Trump announces historic peace plan between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. It doesn't really say the Palestinians here in the final form, and I hate the way this jumps. President, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and Crown Prince blah, 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 signed an agreement and said they will continue efforts to achieve a just, comprehensive, and enduring resolution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So it isn't really with the quote-unquote Palestinians, it's about the Palestinians, okay? So these things are always kind of, have many layers and complexities. But is a testament to the bold diplomacy and vision of the three leaders and the courage of the United Arab Emirates and Israel to chart a new path, right, that will unlock the great potential in the region. All three countries, Palestine isn't a country, face common challenges and will mutually benefit from today's historic achievement. Political talk. So they're going to, in the coming weeks, sign bilateral agreements regarding investment, tourism, direct flights, security, telecommunications, technology, blah, 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 all these things that friendly nations do. And by opening this up, they're saying, this is a breakthrough. And in a way, it's probably at least a precursor to one, which we expect, because that's what the Antichrist will do, is enforce a peace treaty in the Middle East. So let's see, high cooperation across the board. Exchanging embassies and ambassadors is probably more important than the, just the business stuff. Expected other countries to follow. Okay, so this is the beginning of something. And it may be that what the Bible means by enforcement of the treaty is that it's expanded. So right now is fairly focused as far as the people involved, but it may be that the treaty that marks Daniel's 70th week will be more, inclusive of other people. And I just now realized that you're not even seeing that screen because I still don't have the PDF up here. There we go. Should have been paying more attention to the chat, but I don't think anybody was complaining about it yet. So anyway, this is the Fox News page that I was talking about, but and the president said the action would be known as the Abraham Accord, named after the father of all three great faiths. Well, this is not true either, and I hate the way this is trying to highlight Abraham Accord. There are only two truly Abrahamic religions. That would be Judaism and Christianity. Islam is not an Abrahamic religion. They may have some genetic descent from Abraham, but Abraham's quote-unquote religion was the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the God of the Old Testament, the God of the Bible, the God of Jews and Christians. So, not the God of Islam. And this is why Islam is not an Abrahamic religion. But everybody keeps pushing this narrative as if they are all three Abrahamic religions, and they're not. And the thing is, this is pointing out also the great error and danger of the heresy of treating the church as somehow spiritual Israel. And this is when it starts to get obvious how important that is, that distinction. So that's why you got to know what's going on, because you can't remain a preterist or historicist or amillennialist for very long and look at these details not only here in the news, but also in the scriptures, and not see that this is absolutely futurist prophecy coming to pass right before our eyes. But anyway, they're pushing the three faiths narrative. And so talking to other nations, so this is why I think it's going to be expanded in its final form in the tribulation. So he praised Jared Kushner, of course, urged us to take an untraditional approach, Kushner said. You can't solve problems that have gone unsolved the way people have done before. So that is a valid point, though. There's the definition of insanity, trying the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So this is something different, which again should perk up our prophetic ears, because this is progress that has not been made, and I think deliberately so, until God said it was time. So he says, we were able to achieve results others could not achieve. This will advance the region and advance the world. So again, expansion of the treaty will probably come soon enough. Meanwhile, Israel's ambassador to the United States tweeted shortly after the agreement, a great day for peace. And I don't have that verse up, but in the New Testament, I think it's in one of the letters to Thessalonians, Paul says, when they, not you, not us, they say peace and security, sudden destruction will come upon them as a woman in labor, and they will not escape. But you, on the other hand, and then he goes on. So this is significant that they're using this kind of wording. So, sorry, distracted by the chat a little bit, but it is an agenda written long ago. It was prophesied by God. It is following what God decreed would happen from long ago. And yet these people, when they're doing these things, have different purposes in their mind, but God makes sure these things happen, because this is the boundaries that God sets. I mean, people make free will choices. They have the free will to choose God or not choose God. They have the free will to do, good or evil. And that's the important thing, that free will is free moral choice. It doesn't mean you can flap your wings and your arms until you fly, because that's never going to work. It's not saying you can do the impossible. But at the same time, just as God used Pharaoh thousands of years ago, he can also use people like Kushner or Trump or Netanyahu or Putin or anybody else, the Arab leaders, who have anybody who has hardened their heart, whether they're, a good person being, willingly in God's service, or a bad person that God is, whoops, I shouldn't have done that. God is using for other purposes, just, beside the point. See a comment from Concerned Citizen has been clean for 1 month now. Awesome. All right. So, achieve something no one else could achieve, and great day for peace. So United States congratulates Israel and the Emirates for this achievement. Like I said, I think this will be expanded. So, and I think that's the end of that article. So let me turn off the PDF again. And to get back to my notes, I've got so many windows open. So anyway, the point of all that so far has been about Kushner, who he is, who he's been, who he's worked with in the past, such as the likes of George Soros, and that he's been successful in managing Trump's campaign with social media and orchestrating this peace agreement. And that, in my opinion, it will be expanded for the final version. So, let's go on now to, I'll take a look at the chat, and then I want to go on to the video that was passed to me on the Kabbalah. So let me see what's going on in the chat first and see who I've missed. Let's see. We've got, hope I went back far enough. Martin Stolberg, Rachel Menifee. I think I mentioned Davey. We got James Mason, Eyes Wide Shut, Elaine Awakened Jaguar, Emlu, and let's see. Yep, check out his channel, I guess, and Unicorn Laser Eyes. Will this live stream be saved and uploaded to your channel? Yeah, I normally try to record, but I haven't been recording them lately because they're just, whatever I happen to come up with, and they're not a planned thing. So I'm not personally recording this right now, but YouTube is recording it, and it may take till tomorrow that it's available for download or to rewatch. Because live streams, it always, YouTube just takes forever to finish rendering those. But it will be on my channel. It will stay there. So, let's see. Catching up in chat. Enforcing peace with tanks and aircraft carriers on the way to Syria. Well, that's the way of the world. That's the way it's always been. Why should we expect something different? There's awful lot going on. But yeah, God is in ultimate control of the flow of human history as far as the major events go. And the world is absolutely primed for the Antichrist. We'll welcome the Antichrist. Let's see. I think I'm almost caught up, and then the chat jumped on me again. Okay. Not believing it's real would be the only possibility. Yeah, I don't want to get deep into that right now. I've done other prophecy stuff, but yeah, Jesus coming, as Chow said, was predicted to the day for, the 490-year prophecy, 62 weeks and then 67, making 69 until the Messiah was cut off, and then 1 week remains. And so that's why the only unknown for all of us has been when that week would commence. And we know it commences by an event, the enforcement of the 7-year treaty with Israel and many. And yet what we're looking at today is certainly at least the first steps leading into that. So, and Doc Michael, I don't know if I mentioned you either. But anyway, now I want to get into this, and I will post a link to the video. I'm not going to play the video, obviously. We don't want copyright strikes. But here it is. I think I'm showing this on screen. Yeah. No more news. The occult secrets of Judaism revealed. And this is why I mentioned the Kabbalah earlier. There are different people with that sort of thing, but this is their esoteric teaching, if you will, to put it kindly. But I have some approximate timestamps. What I did was it's a long interview. It's, almost 2 hours. And what I did was get the transcript and kind of work through just looking at that and getting the main points out of it. So, yeah, this is, whoever No More News is. I'm not real familiar with the channel, but the person being interviewed, I think, is this John Bjerknes or something like that. So, approximate timestamps, and yeah, there was a lot of Jew hate in the Northern European area for some reason. But anyway, right off the bat, at about the 23-second mark, the guest being interviewed, this guy's name I didn't just pronounce, I would probably mispronounce, Jan, I don't know. Anyway, he's going to discuss some troubling, disturbing doctrine in Judaism, and he's an author, historian, researcher, expert in Jewish supremacy. That's what we're told about the guy. I don't know. I can't vouch for it either way. And he did a series on something called Lurianic Kabbalah. And he says that around the minute 40 mark that Amazon had contacted him to know that they had banned his book. And so this guy's, interviewing because of that. And he says at the 11-minute mark that the Kabbalah is essentially the old Canaanite religion, and that the Old Testament was the religion of the priest class in the temple, but throughout Israel there were folk religions. Well, it depends on when in Israel's history that you would make that claim, because it wasn't just the priestly religion. In fact, it was the priests and the kings most of the time who led the people astray into idolatry. The story of the Old Testament is like a roller coaster ride between good and bad, depending on which king was in office, and they did whatever the king did pretty much. If the king was good, they were good, and they followed the laws of Moses. And if the king was bad, they went chasing after, whatever version of the golden calf came along. And so this is kind of a broad brush statement that isn't entirely accurate to say that it was, that the Israelites had folk religions all the time. It isn't a continuous thing, and not necessarily just a folk religion, but the leadership was involved very much in that. So anyway, the Kabbalah, they're saying, is the old Canaanite religion, which may or may not be true. I don't know. But on the 1157 mark, he says on Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, they would offer the scapegoats, right? They have 2 goats. One of the goats would be chosen to be sacrificed, they said, to Azazel, or Satan, in the wilderness. And the other goat would be sacrificed as part of the rites of the temple, and those 2 goats represent, in his opinion, Esau and Jacob, the twin sons of Isaac. But that is not true in the slightest. I can give you, let me give you a link. I don't know if I'll bother to show it because I don't want to open another window. But here's the link to Constable's notes on the Bible, which for the most part are very good and very well researched. Although he has, drops the ball at the women's question like everybody else does. But in that link on page 134 and 135, he states that the 2 goats represent the price of sin and the removal of sin via sinless agents. So the 2 goats are the price and the removal of sin. The meaning of Azazel is obscure, but the context is not. Neither goat represents Satan or Esau or Jacob in Scripture, whether literally or figuratively. It is certainly not a, quote, gift to Satan. That's a quote from Constable's notes that I just posted there. And so we know that these, if you do proper research, and proper means meticulous, look at all the sources, not just the Middle Ages one or the biased ones. Either way, you look at the evidence and let it tell you what it is. And based upon that kind of research, you find out that these goats had to do with the price and removal of sin away from the nation of Israel. And they did not represent any personage mentioned in the Bible. It's just sin, dealing with sin and taking it away from the nation of Israel as a whole. So when this person being interviewed says that the goats represent Esau and Jacob, that's a flat out lie. It's just simply not true. Now maybe the Kabbalists believe that, which is what he's being asked about. But biblically, this is not true. And you're going to find people parroting this stuff all the time. So that's why I'm kind of emphasizing this right now, is that the 2 goats represent the price and removal of sin from Israel, not any other entity. Not Jacob, not Esau, not Satan. No, none of those qualify as what the goats represent. But the Kabbalah might say that. Okay? So the guest goes on to describe the belief of the Kabbalists that Gentiles are the goat sacrificed to Satan on behalf of the people of Israel. So by getting Gentiles to fight their wars, they sacrifice them to Satan. This is why I wanted to talk about Jared Kushner. Okay? If anything's going on with all that, it would be the Kabbalistic view of things, certainly not the biblical. And if there was a censored comment, I missed it. I'm hoping a mod, let that go through. Because, yeah, that's YouTube doing that. YouTube will censor those things. I mean, if you even say, check out my channel, YouTube will censor that because they think it's, you're just trolling when in fact it might be, apropos to the conversation to say, hey, here's a link to what I've been talking about. But YouTube's algorithm doesn't distinguish that, so lots of things get censored. But it is being done by YouTube, not by channel owners. Anyway, so hopefully everybody understands that when you hear someone parrot this Kabbalistic view of what the goats represented, remember to tell them the truth. And it's real simple, is that they represented the price and removal of sin from Israel. Okay. Now the Kabbalists say that it's the them being Kabbalists, or however you pronounce that, their view is that everybody who is not a Jew is to be sacrificed on their behalf. And to them, especially around, I think, the 15-minute mark or so, the guy says that Christianity to the Kabbalists represents a system whereby Gentiles voluntarily sacrifice themselves to Satan based upon the promise of eternal life. They believe that, let's see, Samael or something is the guardian angel of Esau, which represents all Gentiles. So anyway, they're saying that Christianity's belief in eternal life is a curse upon us for, being sacrificed to Satan on their behalf. And so that's what the Kabbalists believe, and is probably more behind anything you want to know about the Middle East, than anything else. So, and then around the 16.5-minute mark, he says again that having Gentile nations move embassies to Jerusalem is meant to build 70 Noahide nations. In other words, this is more of their Kabbalistic plans that they're doing for their reasons, but God will do for his reasons. And the Noahide laws, I think I've mentioned that before, I forget when, it might be a month or so ago, that these have, they sound all very nice on the surface, but they're really meant for everybody but the Jews. So this is, again, Jewish Kabbalism, or however you pronounce that. Now, another view on, among them even, around the 17-minute mark, almost the 18-minute mark, is that they believe, these Kabbalists believe in two gods. One of their god is Yahweh, a male god, and their heavenly king, who signifies either Baal, the sun, or El himself. And the other god that the Jews worship is Shekinah, their heavenly queen. These two gods, he says, couple together in an androgynous being. That is to say, they believe that the one true God that they worship is an androgynous being that has both good and evil in it. And this, of course, is not the God of the Bible. It is blasphemy to say that about the God of the Old Testament that they supposedly worship. But I just want you to be familiar with the terms that they're using. So we got the two scapegoats, but we also have the two gods. So when everybody says, even many supposed Christians saying that the God of the Old Testament is bad and the God of the New Testament is good, it's more Kabbalistic than biblical. So anyway, also around the 18.5-minute mark, he says they believe that Shekinah, which is just the glory of God, not God himself or a separate God or either male or female God, they believe that Shekinah became angry with Yahweh, the demon spirit. So they're outright calling God Satan. She became angry with him in 70 A.D., and she then became the guardian of the Jews, and that this is where and when this happened. So they believe that ever since 70 A.D., they're not being in exile because of their sin, but because two gods got mad at each other and split up, and one took the Gentiles and the other took the Jews. That's how they view all these things, but their own self-delusion is what's driving them right into the plans of God. And then at the 19-minute mark, he says that another, I think, goddess of more than a Gnostic flavor, Lilith, has since become the bride of Yahweh. So Yahweh remarried, and they view that as a very bad thing, which has resulted in all of their persecution since the destruction of the temple. In other words, they don't blame themselves and their sin for their exile. They blame Gentiles and these wars among gods. And to them, Jesus was one of those demonic young that Lilith bore, and Jesus was the serpent that tempted Eve. This is utter blasphemy and against their own Messiah and their own God. And yeah, so you can figure out, if you didn't figure out already, that judgment is coming to Israel, just as Daniel 9 prophesied. So, but this is all I'm going to say about this guy's interview. I just wanted to hit those major points because they're important for us to know where people are coming from, even if they don't know where they're coming from, because they haven't looked into this history. They don't really, a lot of them know a lot about Jared Kushner, or the Kabbalism of the Jews, or the fact that God is going to punish the world and the Jews to purify Israel so that the millennium can commence and he can set up the promised kingdom, the promise to Abraham in the land, the physical land with the physical people. And there will be a distinction during the millennium between Israel and the rest of the nations. And I've gone over that before, so I'm not going to do it now. And plus, my voice is getting tired anyway. But I hope the point has been gotten across today that there is these things you see in the news, however much of it you can believe, right? But there's enough different sources from enough length of time to know that these things going on, especially in the Middle East, are not an accident, that God is still in control of it, and that terrible times are about to come upon the world. For anyone who doesn't belong to Jesus right now, you will have to go through this. There will be people who come out the other side and survive, but you don't want to take the chance and go through that. So again, the gospel is really simple. To be in Christ right now, to be in Christ, that phrase is kind of a biblical Christian jargon kind of thing, but it means to belong to him, to be adopted, to bear his name, because that's the gospel, is that God offers adoption and reconciliation through the Jesus who rose from the dead. If we trust in him, then we're guaranteed a spot in heaven by the Holy Spirit, who is the deposit of that guarantee that we get when we're saved. And so if you put your trust in the Jesus who rose from the dead to reconcile you to God and accept that gift of adoption, you won't be going through the tribulation. And people will say it's dangerous to say that. I've gone over the pre, mid, post trib, pre-wrath thing before, but they are very mistaken when they think this is a dangerous teaching, because even Jesus said, "Pray that you may be counted worthy to escape." And I know the context of that, but the point is that Jesus said escape is a good thing. He promises that, and we have it all over the New Testament. So anyway, if anybody who ever watches this video or any of the others like it, and again, I recommend J.D. Farag or Andy Woods on prophecy, just remember that the Bible called this thousands of years ago, and it's happening now. And so, given everything going on, the pandemic, what was the other thing I was going to mention? It just left me. This stuff going on right here that we've, been talking about, the riots was the other thing. This is all designed to tear apart the Western world, especially the United States, which stood in the way of the beast kingdom, because there have been so many practicing Christians here. It's kind of died out a long time ago in even Western Europe. There aren't many, as many as there certainly used to be of Christians there. But that's the same thing has happened here. And it's done by these expressed plans of the deep state to, first of all, break the morality of people, especially in the United States. The strong Christian base had to be destroyed inch by inch through the public schools, through the media, through entertainment, anything at all, and everything at all. It's all been to come to this point where everyone comes out of the government school system believing whatever the authorities tell them, hating whoever the authorities tell them to hate, and being primed and ready through these Kabbalistic teachings and Gnosticism and so forth, syncretism, astrotheology, all of these things are teaching people to hate Christians and Jews. Whether they deserve it or not is beside the point. They're being conditioned and have been brought to the point where you just knee-jerk reaction, stimulus response. The government tells you hate this, don't hate that, and the people follow. And so a critical mass of that, I think, has been reached in the world, which is why I'm so convinced that this is the cusp of the tribulation, and of course that before that, the rapture of the church, because the wrath of God cannot rain down while we're here. And the wrath of God is defined as anything that is because God directly causes it on the earth, and that starts with the very first seal of the seal judgments. So thank you, Prof. Red MAA, also for that link, which neither of us thought much of at the time as far as, what I was going to talk about today. But it turned out to fit pretty well, like I said, like peanut butter and chocolate, because even though those are good things, I shouldn't smear them with this, but you get the idea that this is a very likely precursor, just as the forced vaccination threat is a conditioning or precursor to the mark of the beast, which will come 3.5 years after the treaty is enforced, which is, we don't know how much time transpires between the rapture and the enforcement of the probably expanded treaty. So that's what I can tell you about Jared Kushner and about what's going on in the Middle East, with first the moving of the embassy and then this peace treaty, and what's likely to come in the actual tribulation treaty is an expansion of this, and something that includes building the Jewish temple, the exact location of which I can't say, but I do know that the Dome of the Rock is not on it. It's on Herod's compound that he built, basically a barracks. I forget the actual term for it. Just slipped my mind, but that is a little bit north, I think, if my direction is right, of the actual temple location. The temple was on an outcropping over the Gihon River. I think it's a Gihon. No, I'm saying that right. Starts with a G, I think. But anyway, there's this river that runs under this outcropping, and that's where the temple was built. It was built over this river. So the Wailing Wall is not a wall of the temple. It's a wall of Herod's compound. So they're praying to a Roman garrison building. The garrison, but there's another word I'm looking for. I think it's not a praetorium or something. I forget what it is, the Latin name. But anyway, that was the stuff that was built on basically behind the temple for Herod and his forces. So I don't know whether the tribulation temple will be built on the actual temple site or on Herod's temple site where the Dome of the Rock is. I don't know. Or the Al-Aqsa Mosque, that's what they refer to it as. So anyway, we're trying to, put the puzzle pieces in order here. And those are the things, more than any kind of dreams and visions, in my opinion, are telling us how late the hour is, because I've mentioned before about a very sincere lady that, it was, I don't know, maybe 5-10 years ago now. I don't know if it's been that long, but at least 5 years, who was certain that Jesus had been telling her things, and that he said that he would be coming back in weeks or months, or days and weeks, not months or years. And she shut down her website, her channel, and said, we're ready to go. And of course, that was a long, long time ago. And so the dreams and visions, while maybe sincere, I think if they're legitimate, they're for the person, and they're not going to tell us anything about Bible prophecy that we don't already know, that we don't have in writing. And so when we look at what's going on around us, to be aware of the times we live in, that's how we know, and we compare it against Scripture, that's how we know how late we are. So let me look at the chat again, and because like I said, we're about done. We're almost close to our hour anyway. Let me roll back here a little bit. Chow has a verse, "Woe to my worthless shepherd who deserts the flock. May the sword strike his arm and his right eye. Let his arm be wholly withered, his right eye utterly blinded." That has to do with the belief of some that the Antichrist will have been wounded. In the context immediately there in Zechariah 11:17, it's talking about these are figures of speech that have to do with striking down the strength of a country or a person, a kingdom. But it could have prophetic significance as well. So just something to keep on the back burner. Let's see. Something about mod status. I didn't see the rest of that. Let's see. Show or hide. Okay. Yeah, I don't know anything about the missing comments. Sorry, I don't see that looking back. Let's see. We speak of the mysteries and mysterious and hidden wisdom of God, None of the rulers of this age had understood it, or they would not have crucified. Yeah, this is stuff that was hidden before is now being revealed. now being revealed. Let's see. Santos Russian. Haven't seen you before. Christ already rules the earth. We live far past the end times. I disagree. I don't agree with preterism that it ended in 70 A.D. I'm well familiar with all alternatives to futurism, and I find them lacking in one point or another compared to Scripture. Certainly, Jesus has taken back the title deed of earth at the crucifixion and resurrection, but other prophecies still remain to be fulfilled. And I've gone over that before, but I'm not unfamiliar with preterist beliefs on that topic. This is not the new heavens and the new earth. Because there is still sin, there is still death. The devil is obviously still quite active, not bound. This is not it. This is nothing matching the description of the new heavens and new earth. The new earth has no oceans. It has no sun. There's no need of the sun. There's just too many things that don't match. So, this is not heaven. Not at all. Not the new heavens, not the new earth. We have not seen the new Jerusalem come down from heaven, which is something like 1,400 miles square at the base and 1,400 miles high. That is not figurative language. It's a description of what John saw, and he was not saying, in a vision I saw, as he did in the middle of the book when he said, I saw the woman with the 12 stars, and I saw the woman riding the beast, these great signs in heaven. He didn't call the New Jerusalem a great sign in heaven. He said, I saw it coming down from heaven to earth, and that the new heaven and new earth wouldn't need the sun or the moon to light it because it would come from, the New Jerusalem and Jesus and the temple and all that. So we're definitely not in the new heavens and new earth. There's just not debatable. Let's see. No, soon to come did not mean that. The word is takos in Greek, and it means quickly or suddenly. When he comes, he will come suddenly. And so, no, he did not come back in 70 A.D. He did at the ascension. The disciples were staring at the sky after Jesus was brought up, caught up to the sky and hidden by the clouds, and they were still staring, and an angel appeared and said, why are you staring at the sky? This same Jesus will return as you saw him leave. So it has to be visible, and he has to come down from the sky, and people have to see it. That's how he left. It wasn't figurative then. It won't be figurative when he returns. This has not happened. Therefore, this generation and, language like that will not apply to the people of the first century because Jesus did not return. So since he did not return, it's a misunderstanding to say this generation meant the one of the first century. It cannot mean that. So, hopefully that's clear enough, but like I said, I've got other prophecy videos where I've spent more time on that. All right, you can kick Santos Russian to the curb if they're going to say, who cares what you think and you're parroting false doctrine. Kick him out. He doesn't, obviously not here to learn anything. He's here to try to change the truth of God to a lie. Let's see, thanks for the link from Chow to prophecy stuff. As far as preparing for martyrdom, and that's a common criticism, not saying you're doing that, Davey, but it's a common criticism of pre-trib is that we're afraid of suffering or we're teaching people to be unprepared. Nothing could be farther from the truth, of course, because Christians right now are suffering. Christians have suffered since the first century. Since there were Christians, somewhere Christians have always been suffering. And each of us should be prepared to suffer and die for the faith. So when the rapture happens is nothing to do with fear of suffering or expectation of getting out of it. I mean, again, Jesus said, pray that you may escape. So Jesus wasn't saying don't be prepared for suffering. He said both things. He said, if you follow me, you're going, suffer persecution. And at the same time, he said, he mostly talked in the Olivet Discourse about the tribulation, not the church at all. He's talking about Israel. But in the Revelation, he talks also in his letters to the churches, especially to Philadelphia, about because you've protected my word, I'm going to protect you out of the hour of trial that's to come upon the whole earth, to test the inhabitants. And this is why we're not a part of that. That's the wrath of God, and we're not to be suffering that because we belong to Jesus, who already took that suffering for us. So we're not to suffer the wrath of God. But we can suffer other wrath, the wrath of man and Satan, and that's what's been happening for all of human history. So nobody is saying don't be prepared for suffering, but listen to the Holy Spirit if you're being told to prepare any other way, which is such as, prepping in the more colloquial sense, where you build up some a bunker or whatever it is, build up food. So yeah. That's what that's all about. And again, I'm losing my voice. So, yes, there's always been an Antichrist waiting because Satan doesn't know when this is going to, start off. But I think we've reached a point of no return. Damascus has not yet been completely destroyed because there's still people living there. Whereas the prophecy against Damascus was that only animals would graze there. There would be no people. So we haven't quite reached that point yet. Excuse me. Let's see. So yeah, we've already gone over the always be prepared for whatever God may have, allow to happen to you. Santos Bonacci, you mentioned, is a notorious syncretist, anti-Christian, anti-Jew, pushing the Gnostic version of things all the time and thinking he's a Bible expert when he's not. And I did a video on him a long time ago where I read through an article that someone who was also an astrotheologist called him out as a charlatan. So I wouldn't listen to Santos Bonacci or any of his followers. Let's see. Remember these things? Black Sabbath was the band. Yes, they were. Yes, and Revelation, that's another thing I didn't bring out that Chow brought out. Revelation was written around 95 AD, and that's when the revelation was given during the reign of Domitian. And so anybody who tries to say that Revelation is about a past event to John's time is mistaken. Hey, Dr. Long, good to see ya. Let's see, Milgram experiments. Okay. It's not cool to say he doesn't care what we think, and he was just here to disrupt things. So, let's see. I always found it suspicious that in the Tanakh, the book of Daniel is conveniently in the writings or wisdom section rather than the prophets section. What's more important to me is how they interpret it rather than, and then that's kind of saying how they interpret it. But there's prophecy in even the writings and wisdom literature, so I don't think that really gets them off the hook if they try to put it in a different category. But yeah. Hey, Pillbox, good to see you too. Yep. Thanks, Erwin, and other kind comments. Let's see. Yeah. Obviously, Jesus has not come back yet, but he's about to, in my opinion. And we don't know what we're going to have to suffer in the meantime. And there's been personal suffering. There's Christians in the world today who are being enslaved, tortured, killed, robbed, everything you can imagine just for being Christians. And the media isn't going to tell you about those things at all. They'll tell you about suffering Muslims, but they won't tell you about suffering Christians. Let's see, the two witnesses, just briefly. And I've gone over this in detail in other videos. The two witnesses are humans, possibly Enoch and Elijah, who are the only two in the Bible who went to heaven physically in their mortal bodies and didn't, or someplace off the earth and never died physically. It could be Moses and Elijah, according to other people, but they will be the witnesses outside of Jerusalem for the first half of the tribulation. So and then they are killed, they're murdered by the Antichrist, and everybody will be happy. And then suddenly, after 3.5 days, there's that number again, there will be a voice from heaven that says, come up here, and the two witnesses rise to their feet and are taken up into heaven, and everybody's terrified. That's what I think about the two witnesses. Yeah, that's authority is what's everybody needed to be primed, taken away from the idea of personal freedom and freedom of conscience and nationalism even to this collective one world government sort of mentality. They have to be ready to accept it and calling out for it as they're doing now, for someone to lead the world out of this chaos. Order out of chaos has been their catchphrase for a long time, the deep state. So yeah, so many convergences, so many chess pieces in place. It's got to be soon. We've crossed too many points of no return, in my opinion. So yeah, that's what I have for today, and hopefully that's been of some benefit. I hope we've at least made you aware, if you weren't. I know most of you probably are, about the Kabbalistic motives behind a lot of these things, and that we encounter these teachings all over the internet. And we should at least know something about what to say, and or at least have a red flag pop up that what this person's saying is Kabbalistic or Gnostic or syncretistic or one of the other istics, not the Bible, and stick to the Bible. So, all right, I think I'll go ahead and end it there, because I don't see any really burning questions in the chat, and we've reached our hour. So again, thanks everybody for coming. Spread the word and pray for everybody, and because there is not much time left. So whatever you wanted to do it now. And if we're still here next week, I'll see you then. Thanks. Bye.